Good day, greetings students. I'm very happy to meet you all again in grade 11 economics. We are in part A, statistics for economics. So this is the last chapter for statistics for economics, which is going to be index numbers. So far we have discussed so many things. So this statistics doesn't end with this academic year alone. So statistics படிச்சது இந்த வருஷத்தோட முடிஞ்சிருச்சுன்னு கிடையாது. Even in your 12th standard, you would be requiring statistics. In what terms? Means you'll be having your project work. So you need to know everything about doing a project. So statistics helps you there. So statistics la nama paatha ella chapter ume it is connected to your project work. Alright children, so the first thing that we did was to know what is statistics, what is economics, and how statistics is connected with economics. Then we did data collection. What did we do next? We collected data. Then we spoke about organizing that data. So what did we do? We organized this data and then we present this data. So what did we do, ma? First, data collection. So we saw that there are various methods and modes of data collection, like you can have a telephonic interview, you can have a personal interview, you can have a mailed interview. So ஒரு questionnaire எடுத்து அதை அவங்க கிட்ட கொடுத்து நம்ம கலெக்ட் பண்ணுறோம், இன்ஃபர்மேஷன் கலெக்ட் பண்ணுறோம். That is called data collection. So you have two types of data. You have primary data and secondary data. So what are the two types of data, children? You have primary data and secondary data. Primary data means you collecting the information yourself. அதாவது அந்த researcher collect பண்றாங்க இல்லையா information, that first hand information, direct collection through any of these modes is called as primary data. What is meant by secondary data? Secondary data means when you take this data from already collected resource or source might be a magazine or a website or a government released report. இதிலிருந்து நமக்கு கிடைக்கிற data, we call it a secondary data. So for example, census is a primary data. Directly we collect it from them. அதிலிருந்து நம்ம எடுக்கிறோம் இல்லையா, இப்போ primary data is census. From that, when you want to take children who go to school, who are of that schooling age, and the schooling age குள்ள இருக்கிறவங்கள ஏற்கனவே எடுத்த சென்சஸ்ல இருந்து நம்ம அந்த இன்ஃபர்மேஷன் எடுக்கிறதுக்கு பேர் செகண்டரி டேட்டா. ஸோ கலெக்டிங் தட் இன்ஃபர்மேஷன் டைரக்ட்லி இஸ் பிரைமரி, whereas using that collected information for something else is called as secondary data. Then we go for organizing data. So what do we organize? நம்ம கலெக்ட் பண்ண டேட்டா, it will be raw data. Getting information from this raw data is very difficult. So ஒரு huge setல இருந்து நம்மளால ஒரு விஷயத்தை நம்மளால எடுக்க முடியாது. Now when you enter a library, you know what book you want, but you don't know where it is. So அங்க நிறைய books இருக்கு. Everywhere you see there are books. How will you take the book? You keep on searching. Is that an easy job? எல்லா புக்ஸையும் தேடி நமக்கு தேவையான புக் எடுக்கிறது, how difficult and tedious it is. Similarly, here also we cannot organize or we cannot take information out of this data. ஒரு huge setல இருந்து ஒரு piece of information எடுக்கிறது It's very difficult. Now imagine the same library. The same library is organized very well. So when you walk in, you know the books are in the alphabetical order or subject wise. So உங்களுக்கு தெரியும் books வந்து either in the alphabetical order or the subject wise it will be there. So there will be like here you have novels, here you have history related books, here it's science related books, here it is economic books, this side these are magazines. So appadi irukkrappo you know what you want and you can directly go there to draw that book. So that makes your work very very easy. அது வந்து ரொம்ப ஈஸி பண்ணி கொடுக்குறோம் இல்லையா அந்த ஒர்க்கை. ஸோ தட் இஸ் வை we have this system of organizing data. So எப்படி நம்ம classify பண்ணுறோம்? On the basis of what do we classify means we have chronological classification, or spatial classification. So chronological அப்படின்னா based on time, okay, based on years, weeks, months. Okay, when a baby is growing in the mother's womb, they will be measuring like 4 weeksல இவ்வளோ growth இருக்கணும், 8 weeksல இவ்வளோ growth இருக்கணும் அந்த குழந்தைக்கு, 10 weeksல இவ்வளோ growth இருக்கணும். So they measure it based on what? Based on time frame. That is chronological classification. Now when the child is growing, each year they measure ivlo height valandirukanu, weight ivlo increase aayirukanu. That is chronological. When we measure your test marks, we do in the month ku ivlo increase aayirukanga, next month how much do they increase. Chronological classification. Then the monthly expenses, chronological classification. Right children? Spatial classification. What is spatial classification? Based on the place. So இப்போ நம்ம weather report பார்க்குறோம் அப்படின்னா the temperature of Chennai, of Namakkal, of Trichy, of Tirupur, okay, based on the place, telling the temperature is spatial classification, telling the rainfall is spatial classification. Now you see the COVID cases based on what? Places. ஒவ்வொரு ஸ்டேட்டில் எவ்வளோ நியூ கேசஸ், ஹவு மெனி வேர் டிஸ்சார்ஜ், அண்ட் இன் எவ்ரி கண்ட்ரி, எவ்ரி ஸ்டேட், எவ்ரி டிஸ்ட்ரிக்ட், எவ்ரி பார்ட் ஆஃப் த டிஸ்ட்ரிக்ட், ஈச் டவுன், வில்லேஜ், everything is taken into account. Okay, that is called as spatial classification. The other two classifications are quantitative classification and qualitative classification. What do we have? Quantitative classification and qualitative classification. We have these classifications also. So இது என்னென்ன பார்த்தோம் அப்படின்னா based on the quantities, how many kgs of rice is bought in this month and next month. So ஒரே மந்தில் ரைஸ் எவ்வளோ கேஜிஸ் வாங்குகிறோம், பல்சஸ் எவ்வளோ கேஜிஸ் வாங்குகிறோம். ஸோ பேஸ்ட் ஆன் த குவான்டிட்டிஸ் when the classification is qualities. So in a classroom, how many students are opting for maths and how many students are opting for computer science? Based on that, when you classify, it's a qualitative classification. Okay, ஒரே கிளாஸில் இருக்கிற 25 ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸில் how many are looking for maths and how many are studying computer science? Alright, that comes under qualitative classification. Alright, next we move on to presenting this data. So you can present it in a form of text, textual presentation. Then you can go for tabular presentation. Okay, you can go for tabular presentation, and finally you can go for graphical or diagrammatic presentation. Okay, so you have a textual presentation, அதாவது text formatல நம்ம கொடுக்கிற விஷயங்கள், the data collected is presented in form of text. Tabular presentation means it is presented in form of a table. Then diagrammatic presentation means it is presented in form of diagrams. அதில் நிறைய classification இருக்கு. Bar diagrams, histograms, graphs, arithmetic line graphs, O-gives, frequency diagrams, all these are there. After presenting your data, the next step was to go for finding the measures of central tendency. What do we mean by measures of central tendency? Finding the arithmetic mean, mode or median. அதாவது whatever you are presented graphically, அதோட numerical terms or explanation தான் measures of central tendency. So imagine a company wants to know its profit and loss. சரியா? They have all this data collect பண்ணிட்டாங்க, present பண்றாங்க, it is in form of graph. Do you think it will be only helpful? ஒரு graph பார்க்கறதுனால அவங்களோட profit and loss அவங்களால analyze பண்ண முடியுமா? No, they need numerical figures. So who gives that numerical figures? Measures of central tendency. So here you have the calculation of arithmetic mean, median and mode. Okay, you have arithmetic mean, median and mode. These are the measures of central tendency. Alright, then we have measures of dispersion. What else do we have? Measures of dispersion. We actually have 4 different measures of dispersion. எதுக்காக dispersion means arithmetic mean, median or mode gives an average. Okay, any huge values at the top or at the bottom has an effect on the mean or median. So இப்போ ஒரு கிளாஸ்ல மார்க்ஸ் பற்றி பேசுகிறோம் அப்படின்னா how many people have scored the maximum னு ஒரு விஷயம் இருக்கும் இல்லையா? So most of them have scored above 80, above 90 அப்படி தான் ஸ்கோர் பண்ணியிருக்காங்க. Very few people have scored 20, 30. ஆனால் அதுவும் உங்களோட ஆவரேஜை அஃபெக்ட் பண்ணும். That is one drawback of measures of central tendency, and that is why we go for measures of dispersion. What is this? நம்மளோட arithmetic meanல இருந்தோ இல்லை மீடியன்ல இருந்தோ values, original values differ எவ்வளோ ஆகுது? How much do they differ? Okay, is what we talk about in measures of dispersion. The various measures are range, then you have quartile deviation, you have mean deviation, and then finally we have standard deviation. What are the things? You have range, quartile deviation, mean deviation and standard deviation. So range na enna appadina, it is very simple. L minus S, the largest value minus the smallest value. Next comes the quartile deviation. So நம்ம median discuss பண்றப்பவே quartile na என்னன்னு பார்த்தோம். That is median divides the data into half. Okay, 50% this side and 50% that side. Whereas quartiles divides your data into 4. 25, 25, 25, 25. Less than 25, less than 50, less than 75. Okay, those are your 4 divisions. So இதை எப்படி நம்ம, well, how will you find this? Upper quartile minus lower quartile by 2. Then you have mean deviation. it is a little different. Mean deviation, standard deviation, it is little different in the formulas. So for mean deviation, you have to first find the mean or the median. Mean illana median kandupidichittu, based on that you have to find the dispersion. Whereas standard deviation, first thing is you find the arithmetic mean. From arithmetic mean, how much it differs, that you have to identify. It is given by the symbol sigma. There are various methods to calculate your standard deviation. Alright children, so the next step here is to talk about correlation. Correlation gives the relation between two or more variables. So to know, so is there a relationship is the first thing, right? Is there a relationship between this and that? Okay, there is an increase in the sales of soaps, other side, and there is the increase in the spread of disease, other side. So do they have a relation? First question. Second question is there a change in the value of one another? அதாவது இப்போ diseases increase ஆக sale of soap increase ஆதா? Is there a same side of change? Okay, then in which direction it changes? Positive correlation or negative correlation? And then finally talking about the intensity of it, how strong is the relationship. So we saw that the correlation is given by R, and what should be the value of R? R enga irukanuma? R should be between -1 and +1. Okay, where should be R's value? Between -1 and +1. So if your correlation value does not exist in the range kulla ungaloda correlation value kadakela appadina, your calculation is wrong. Your answer would be either -1 or +1, that's a perfect correlation, or between -1 and +1. Okay, between -1 and +1. Clear children? These are the various chapters that we have discussed already. What are we going to discuss now? We are in chapter 8 and we are discussing about index numbers, isn't it? What are we discussing about? We are discussing about index numbers. What are these index numbers? So far we spoke about correlation. ரெண்டு வேரியபிளுக்கு உண்டான ரிலேஷன்ஷிப், அதில் நடக்கிற சேஞ்சஸ் தெரிஞ்சுக்கிறது correlation. What is index number? An index number is a statistical device. Device for what? For measuring changes. Changes in what? In the magnitude of group of related variables. That's the definition, isn't it children? It's very easy to remember the definition. Right children? It's very easy to remember the definition. This is an important definition also. So kindly remember it. Use techniques to remember. Okay, so an index number is a, what is that? It is a statistical device. Device for what? For measuring the changes, for measuring changes in what? In the level, magnitude of a group of magnitude of a group of related variables. So what is it? A statistical device for measuring the changes. So இங்க என்ன இருக்கும் நமக்கு ஒரு base year and one current year இருக்கும் நமக்கு. From that you should measure the changes. So என்ன index number இருந்தாலும் it will be based on a particular year. We discussed consumer price index, wholesale price index, then industrial index for industrial production. For everything there is an index number and that has a base year. பார்த்தோமா CPI லே நிறைய இருக்கு. So each thing has a base year. Now how do you construct it? நம்ம construct பண்ணோம் இல்லையா, index number எப்படி construct பண்ணுவோம்? You actually have two index numbers. Okay, one is simple index numbers and weighted index numbers. Simple index numbers, there are two methods to find. The first method is simple aggregative method. How do you find it? Summation P1 by summation P0 into 100. What is the one more important thing about index numbers? அதை பற்றி நம்ம தெரிஞ்சுக்க வேண்டிய இன்னொரு விஷயம் என்ன? They are always mentioned in percentage terms. Index number எப்படி சொல்லுவோம்? Percentage termsல சொல்லுவோம். That is, the price has increased by 35%. The demand has decreased by 20%. So it will be given in percentage terms. That's why we have an into 100. So it is given as P01 is equal to summation P1 by P0 into 100. What is this P1? P1 is the price of current year by P0 is the price of base year. Okay, what is next? We also have a method of pricing relatives. Method of, we'll call it average relatives. Aggregative method, aggregation naale totaling. So we just have this summation here. Whereas in method of average relatives, what do we have? In method of average relatives, we have the number of commodities. இங்க இன்னொரு விஷயம் நம்ம என்ன calculate பண்ணணும்? The number of commodities has to be taken into account. 1 by n into summation P1 by P0 into 100. Each product க்கு தனித்தனியா அதோட P1 by P0 எடுத்து then you summate it and then you divide it by 1 by n. You multiply it by 1 by n. The another index number is called a weighted index number. Why do we need this weighted index number? Means to know the importance of the products. எல்லார் வீட்லேயுமே ஒரே மாதிரி தான் basket of commodities இருக்கும்னு நம்ம சொல்ல முடியாது. ஸோ யார் எந்த ப்ராடக்ட்டுக்கு எவ்வளோ இம்பார்ட்டன்ஸ் கொடுக்குறோம், how much importance is given to each product is found by what? The weighted index number given by the weighted index number. So here also we have aggregative method, and what is the formula for it? Idoda namo we are going to take into account about our quantities, each product oda quantities நம்ம எடுக்க போறோம். So we have P01 is equal to summation P1 into Q0 by summation P0 into Q0 into 100. இது வந்து last payers method. There are actually 3 methods. Last payers method, then we have purchase method, summation P1 Q1 by summation P0 Q1 into 100. In last payers method, you take the base quantities, base year oda quantities nam edukrom. Iduve purchase method la current year oda quantities edukrom. We have Fisher's method, a combination of both. Then you have method of averaging relatives. Here weightage is given to each product. So P01 is equal to summation W P1 by P0 into 100 by summation of weight. So weight of each product should be taken. P1 by P0 into 100 நம்ம என்னன்னு சொல்றோம்? R ன்னு சொல்றோம். Relative price of the product. Then total weight. These are the formulas that we have discussed and solved problems about. We have discussed the important index numbers like consumer price index, then we spoke about wholesale price index. So we know that our country takes consumer price index to detect the inflation rate. Consumer price index la irukra changes vechu da inflation decide pannu. What is inflation? Inflation means an increase in the prices. Adha nama inflation nu solrom. But some countries like Philippines take wholesale price index as a method of calculating the inflation. Avanga vandu they take wholesale price index. Iduve US takes the producer's price index to be the level of inflation. Producer price index vechu inflation decide பண்றாங்க. So our country takes CPI as a benchmark. And what are the different CPIs we have? So we have CPI for industrial workers, for agricultural workers, rural laborers, and then we have a common thing called All India combined consumer price. This is taken up by the RBI. So இது எல்லாத்துக்குமே ஒவ்வொரு பேஸ் இயர் இருக்கும், ஒவ்வொரு டிஃப்ரெண்ட் பேஸ் இயர் இருக்கும். ஸோ அதே மாதிரி தான் நம்மளோட WPIக்கும் ஒரு பேஸ் இயர் இருக்குது. ஸோ இப்போத்தியோட பேஸ் இயர் இது 2011 to 12 is the current base year that we are calculating. Then we spoke about Human Development Index, which decides the development of a country. Human Development Index பற்றி நம்ம என்ன பார்த்தோம்? It has some indices to tell how developed is our country and the people of that country. And our position is 129th out of 189 countries. It's really a sad thing. We have to take a little bit higher. We have to do the necessary things. We, in the sense, the government, with our support and with our cooperation. Alright children, in this session we will be discussing about the Sensex. The Sensex is actually a word made out of two different words. Okay, from two different words they have taken it. So it is actually sensitive index. Sensex. Okay, it is actually, for us it is BSE, Bombay Stock Exchange. Okay, they are what? They do what? deal with the shares. And how many companies will be there? 30 companies, 30 important companies will be representing. இதுதான் வந்து நம்ம கண்ட்ரியில் இருக்கிற கம்பெனிஸோட ஸ்ட்ரென்த்தா, இவ்வளோதான் நம்ம கண்ட்ரியில் கம்பெனிஸானா இல்லை. We have many companies in our country, but still these companies, these companies have this sort of representing other industries. இதே மாதிரி இருக்கிற மற்ற இண்டஸ்ட்ரீஸை ரெப்ரசன்ட் பண்ணுறது இந்த 30 companies. So always in BSE, in the Sensex, you can see 30 top companies representing the industrial sector. So as of July, some companies that we have is Asian Paints. So for paints we have Asian Paints. Then for banks we have Axis Banks. Then we have Bajaj company. We have Bajaj Finserv, Bajaj Finance, Bajaj Auto for each sector. So paint and the industrial sector ku Asian Paints, banks ku Axis Bank. Adhe madri then you have Bajaj Auto for automobile industry. Okay, like this how many companies will be there, ma? 30 different companies will be there. These are not permanent, these will change. Okay, based on the shares that they bring. அவங்களோட shares base பண்ணி அவங்களுக்கு இந்த place இருக்கும். Okay, so there is a detail like each company, when did they join Sensex, அவங்களுக்கு எப்போ இந்த place கிடைச்சது, everything is there. And it works in Mumbai. Okay, where is BSE? It is in Mumbai. If you see, other stock market, stock exchange போய்க்கிட்டே இருக்கும். It will be going up, coming down. Sensex has gone up to this many points. Sensex has come to this down points. இந்த மாதிரி ups and downs இருக்கும். Based on what? Based on the value of the shares. இந்த points எதோட பேஸ்ல கிடைக்குதுமா? These points are given based on the value of shares of these company. எவ்வளோ பேர் இதில் இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணுறதுக்கு ரெடியாக இருக்காங்க, how many people are interested to invest in these shareholders-ஆக இருக்கிறதுக்கு எவ்வளோ பேர் ரெடியாக இருக்காங்க. It has seen its own problems, it has seen its own recession. அதோட low points இருக்குது. At one time it was about 2006 if I am not wrong, where the Sensex was in a very bad condition. So the then finance minister, Mr. Chidambaram, had to stop the progress of Sensex. Annikana work stop panni, he had to assure that nothing is going wrong, ellame normala da irukku, because we have a scare that economically our country is not stable. In the Sensex points vechudha will decide how economically we are doing well. நம்ம செல்ஃப் ரிலையண்ட்டாக இருக்கணும்னு ஒரு பாயிண்ட் இருக்கு இல்லையா? ஸோ அந்த செல்ஃப் ரிலையன்ஸ் கொடுக்கறது எது? we'll get to know through this Sensex. This is an index number. Alright children, these point calculation இருக்கு இல்லையா? These points will be your index numbers. And when did it come into existence? Means it came into existence in 1989. Started in 1989, which is its base year. Base year is 1978 to 79 with the index number of 100. Okay, the index number of 100, base year எது எடுத்துக்கிறோம்? 1978 to 79. And who gave this term? Sensex term who introduced? It was introduced by Deepak Mohani. So Sensex, the term was coined by Deepak Mohani. Alright children, So these are some of the companies that are in the 30 companies. எவ்வளோ companies தான் அதில் இருக்கணுமா? Only 30 companies can be there. Are they the only companies? அவங்கள தவிர்த்து வேறு companies இல்லையா? No. We have many companies, but these companies represent, okay, this industrial sector. So Asian Paints represents all the painting sector, whichever industry is in the line of that particular business is represented by that. So என்ன மாதிரியான shares அங்க இருக்கும்? What kind of shares will be sold there means floating shares. Okay, they will have the system of free float capitalization. Why do we have the shares first of all? நம்ம share market சொல்றோம். Why do we have the share? Because when the company wants some other expansion plans and they want to get finance, அவங்களுக்கு என்ன தேவை? They want some more money. So they will give shares, they will sell their shares, a part of ownership. Shares na enna? It's a piece of ownership. You have seen the difference in private company and public company, yeah? So based on that rules and regulations, they'll sell their shares and that will be done through the free float capitalization. What do we mean by float? Float means shares that are readily available. Okay, shares that are readily available for sales is called as float. Okay children, that is about Sensex. And how many sectors are there? We saw that 30 companies are there with 13 different sectors. Sometimes from the same sector more than one company will represent. So if a banking பார்த்தோம் அப்படின்னா not only Axis Bank, some other bank also will be there in this list. So 13 sectorல இருந்து 30 companies will be there. So what do we know about it? So எதுக்காக இந்த Sensex? What do we know about it? Means it represents, if the Sensex rises, it indicates that the market is doing well and investors expect better earnings from companies. So it tells that a growing confidence of investors in the basic health. So investment பண்றாங்க, the investors are interested. It indicates the interest. It indicates the interest of investors. Right children, that is about Sensex. Some other additional information is Sensex introduced something called Dolex, okay, in July 2001, okay, on 25th July 2001. It's Sensex based on dollar. Here the shares are sold in currency. என்ன currency யூஸ் பண்ணுறோம் அப்படின்னா Indian money, rupee தான் யூஸ் பண்ணுறோம். But there is one more thing called Dolex which was introduced in July 2001. It's Sensex based on dollar. Rupee மட்டும் இல்லாமல் when you are dealing with foreign companies, you have a common currency dollar. அந்த இடத்துல ருப்பியை தவிர்த்து நம்ம மற்றது யூஸ் பண்ணுறது dollar. And what is the working hours of the Sensex means by 9:15 AM it starts. Okay, when does the Sensex starts ma? When does BSE start to work? The Bombay Stock Exchange starts to work by 9:15 AM till 3:30 PM For which days? Monday to Friday. These are the working days and hours of. So Sensex na enna? It's a sensitive index. Okay, it talks about stock exchange and share market. Okay, and it came into existence when? 1989, and the name was given by Mr. Deepak Mohani. Okay children, where does it work? It works in Mumbai. Okay, and how many companies will be listed there? Evlo companies oda shares anga irukum? 30 companies and 13 sectors will be there. So some companies, and then these points are like the value of shares, the investors adha vechi decide pandrom. Then they take the base year as 1978 to 79. Base year venu illaya index number calculate pandradhukku. So 1978-79 is taken as base year with 100 as the value, and then they use the free float capitalization method. And what is it? Float na enna? Shares that are readily available, that inimel create பண்ணறதுக்கு இல்லாம already available shares. Something will be there as capital shares that cannot be liquidized. Okay, so irukku இல்லையா 51% of shares யார்கிட்ட இருக்கோ they only are the owners. They are they'll be the decision makers no or point irukku இல்லையா. So the companies will be very careful that 51% is in the right hands. That is almost the capital shares nama solrom. Okay, so this indicates, and the points edama indicate pannu, it indicates the interest of the investors. So when I saw last of today's the Sensex was somewhere around 159 points. Okay, so it changes every minute, it changes. Okay, the graph goes up and comes down. So in the news they'll show you the starting points and the ending points. So in July 2001 the BSE started a thing called Dolex. It is Sensex based on dollar value, and then the working days are Monday to Friday, and the working hours are 9:15 to 3:30. This is about Sensex. Now we came to know about the construction of index numbers, but are there any problems in construction? Adile edavadhu nam therinjikka vendiya vishayangal irukka? Because we have many formulas. Base year eppadi nam decide pandrathu? Okay, how do you calculate the index numbers correctly? Only if you know the difficulties in it. அதில் இருக்கிற ப்ராப்ளம்ஸ் தெரிஞ்சாதான் அதை எப்படி சால்வ் பண்ணி நம்ம கரெக்டான இண்டெக்ஸ் நம்பர்ஸ் கிரியேட் பண்ணணும்னு பார்க்கணும். ஓகே, ஸோ நவ் we are going to discuss the issues in construction of index numbers, the issues that we have to face in the construction of index numbers. All right children, so what are we going to do? Issues in construction of index numbers. What are the problems? What are the difficulties that we have to face in the construction of index number? அதில் இருக்கிற problems என்ன அப்படின்னா, you need to know which index number to calculate. The purpose of the index, okay, is very, very important. So நம்ம என்ன தெரிஞ்சுக்க ட்ரை பண்ணுறோம்? Are we talking about the price increase or sales volume increase? எதை நம்ம வெரிஃபை பண்ணுறோம்? எதுக்காக இந்த இண்டெக்ஸ் நம்ம கேல்குலேஷனுங்கிறது தெளிவாக இருக்கணும். If you want to know about the price change, then you have to go for value index. If you want to know the increase in the volume, sales volume, then you have to go for volume index. So purpose of index should be very, very clear. Okay, the next thing is weightage. When you give weightage to the commodity, the weightage may not be same. எல்லாருக்குமே ஒரே விஷயம் தான் தேவையா இருக்குமா? Now take a family, okay, let's take a real life situation. My friend, okay, her name is Nikita and I am here. Okay, Nikita is a North Indian and she buys lot of wheat. So every month she buys 5 kgs of wheat. That's important for her. And rice for any special occasion, either pulao or for some other reasons, she's buying, means she'll buy 1 kg of rice. Okay, whereas I don't eat that much of chapati. I don't like to eat that much of chapatis. So my proportion of buying it will be 1 kg of wheat, and instead I'll go for 5 kgs of rice. So what is important for my friend is not important for me, vice versa. So எனக்கு எது முக்கியமோ அது என் ஃப்ரெண்டுக்கு இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் இல்லாமல் இருக்கலாம். அது மாதிரி தான் இண்டிவிஜுவல் கன்சியூமர்ஸோட டேஸ்ட் அண்ட் ப்ரிஃபரன்சஸ் ஆல்சோ வில் டிஃபர். ஸோ எல்லாருக்குமே இதுதான் நார்மல் பேஸ்கெட் ஆஃப் கமாடிட்டிஸ், இதுதான் அவங்களோட குவான்டிட்டி, இதுதான் அவங்களோட இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் ப்ராடக்ட் நம்மளால் சொல்ல முடியாது. Okay, family where elders are, many elders are there, medical expenses will be important for them. Families where children are there, education would be important for them. So the weightage will differ. எதுக்கு importance கொடுக்குறோங்கிறது differ ஆகும். So this has to be kept in mind, especially when you make the consumer price index. Consumer price index la important point enama, giving the weightage. In this case, how will you give a weightage? Right, so based on this you cannot decide the consumer price index. இதை வச்சு நான் consumer price index decide பண்றதுக்கு முடியாது. Okay, and the next point is the base year. How do you choose this? For every price index you have a base year. Consumer price index le for industrial workers the price index is different. For agricultural laborers the price index base year is different. For rural laborers price index is base year is different. So base year irukirappo how can I all different base years? Point number 1, difficulty number 1. Second thing, sometimes the base year is 94, 95. இப்போ வந்து 2020, 21. So the relationship between then and now, cost of living comparison பண்றோம் இல்லையா, how does it work? Okay, so what has been consumed at that point of time has changed now. அப்போ அவங்க கன்சியூம் பண்ண அதே மாதிரி கமாடிட்டிஸ் தான் நம்ம இப்போ கன்சியூம் பண்ணுறோமானா no, it differs. So that is a problem. Base year வந்து ரொம்ப long back இருந்துச்சுன்னா then the index number might not be appropriate for the present time. Alright, so base year has to be updated, kept on updated. Next thing is the choice of the formula. You have last payers formula, you have the past days method, you have the Fisher's method. Which to choose? Right, if you take last payers method will use the base year commodity. Past days method will choose the present time commodity. Edu important. So the choice of formula is a problem that we have to be particular about. What is our reason? நம்மளோட reason என்னன்றதை பொறுத்து நம்ம தெரிஞ்சுக்கணும். இப்போ ப்ரைஸ் சேஞ்ச் அதே குவான்டிட்டிஸ்க்கு ப்ரைஸ் சேஞ்ச் இது அப்படின்னா we have to go for last payers. When you want to know today's value of that day's commodity, we have to go to past case method. Okay, and then sources of data, reliability. The data we get may be reliable or may not be reliable, but it can be first-hand information or not. All these things are there. These difficulties are there with index numbers. All these. We should know the purpose of the index number. We should know the weightage, whether everybody has the same important things, and then taking the base year and the choice of formula and the reliability of information. Finally, we are going to know about index number in economics. What is the use of index number in economics? What is the use of index number in economics? So there are different index numbers. You have CPI, WPI, IIP, have different index numbers. How do you use them in economics? Economics la adoda usage enna appadina, CPI is to determine the standard of living. Okay, CPI for cost of living dane idu, so standard of living, wage negotiation. So நம்ம ஏற்கனவே டிசைட் பண்ணோமா ஒரு எக்ஸாம்பிளில், when I get a transfer, I'll see if my new salary will accommodate me in that new place. எனக்கு அங்கே கிடைக்கிற salary அந்த ஊரோட ஸ்டாண்டர்ட் ஆஃப் லிவிங்கை மேட்ச் பண்ணுமா நான் தெரிஞ்சுக்கணும். For that I need to know my CPI, that is the consumer index number. Okay, consumer index or else the cost of living index. Okay, consumer price index illatna enoda cost of living index I have to know. Then you need to formulate the income policy, and for all the policy formulation you need. Then using the WPI, wholesale price index edukku appadina, for national income policy formulation. Because this is a manufacturer's price, wholesale vaangirappo or aggregate level vaangirappo undana price. So this is taken up for calculating national income and for formulating new policies and all those things. Then WPI is used to measure inflation. Even though we say that CPI தான் நம்ம இன்ஃப்ளேஷனுக்கு எடுக்கிறோம் அப்படின்னாலும், we can take WPI also for inflation. It's so you can compare CPIல இருந்து வந்த இன்ஃப்ளேஷனும் WPIல இருக்கிற இன்ஃப்ளேஷனும் எவ்வளோ சேஞ்ச். ஏன்னா CPIல what are the other things added with CPI? What are the other things you add in CPI? The tax, GST, middleman charges, everything comes in CPI. That is in WPI adella irukadu. So you have to take that into account. So eppadi edukrom nammaloda, how do you calculate the weekly inflation rate? Means xt minus xt minus 1 by for example, இப்போ you are mentioning the weekly inflation rate of 13th week ன்னு வெச்சுக்கலாம். So that means x13 minus x12 by x of 12 into 100. What is this x, children? WPI, the wholesale price index of the 13th week minus the wholesale price index of the previous weeks divided by the wholesale price index of previous week into 100. Why into 100? Index number is always expressed in term of percentage. Clear, children? And then it is CPI is used in calculating the purchasing power. So what is the one more thing of CPI? Calculation of purchasing power. Okay, so there is a small example problem given. Purchasing power earlier எப்படி இருந்துச்சு, இப்போ எப்படி இருக்கு, இப்போ இருக்கிற சேலரிக்கு அப்போ என்ன வாங்கியிருக்கலாம், all these calculations have been given. Then IIP lets you to know about the change in production. What is IIP? Index for industrial production. So it tells you about the change in production. Okay, then you also have agricultural production index for performance of agricultural sector, and Sensex is really useful because we want to know about the market position, stock market பத்தி தெரிஞ்சுக்கிறதுக்காக we have this. So அதை வச்சு தான் இன்வெஸ்டர்ஸ் இந்த கம்பெனியில் இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணலாமா வேண்டாமா, அதோட வேல்யூ என்ன, அதோட ஒர்த் என்ன, அது அவ்வளோ ரிலையபிள் கம்பெனியான்றதெல்லாம் சென்செக்ஸ் வச்சு தான் நம்ம தெரிஞ்சுக்கிறோம். Okay children, so these index numbers you can get from economic survey, you can get from various websites. Every time who does that? The National Sample Survey Organization that does it. அவங்க தான் சர்வே எடுத்து நமக்கு இந்த இண்டெக்ஸ் நம்பர்ஸ் கொடுக்குறாங்க. So you can get these index numbers to get an idea. And what do you learn from it? எதுக்காக இண்டெக்ஸ் நம்பர் அப்படின்னா, to calculate a single measure of change of a large number of items. ஸோ இது வந்து ப்ரைஸ் சேஞ்ச் தெரிஞ்சுக்கிறதுக்கு, குவான்டிட்டி சேஞ்ச் தெரிஞ்சுக்கிறதுக்கு, இது எல்லாத்துக்கும் ப்ரைஸ் இன்க்ரீஸா டிக்ரீஸா கன்சியூமர் ப்ரைஸில், ஹோல்சேலில் என்ன அளவுக்கு சேஞ்ச் இருக்குது, த வால்யூம் ஆஃப் ப்ரொடக்ஷன், வால்யூம் ஆஃப் சேல்ஸ், all this you can get to know from the index numbers. Of course, development of a country, all these you can get to know from it. So this have to be learned very carefully because it's in percentage terms. And what is your purpose? நம்ம ஏற்கனவே டிஸ்கஸ் பண்ண மாதிரி what is the purpose? That is an important question. But index numbers are highly useful for policy formulation. ஏன்னா சிபிஐ தெரிஞ்சிச்சுன்னா நம்ம அங்கே வந்து அந்த ரெண்ட் கண்ட்ரோல் கொண்டு வரலாம். அங்கே if someone is selling at a higher price, we can control, we have a control over that. So all this can be done through the help of index numbers. So that is the end of chapter 8. I hope you have understood that. If at all you have any doubts, you can reach me out and get your doubts clarified. The next chapter will be use of statistical tools, a summary of whatever we have learned so far. We also have an interesting sample project. Be ready children, I am going to give you a sample project for you to do. I'll guide you through it and it's going to be fun learning about it. So we'll meet in the next session with all those information. Thank you and may you all have a wonderful day today.